Hi guys, welcome back to Lost in My Library. My name's Kate. Today I am bringing you my April wrap-up. This month has been disappointing. Going from a month where I read a really fascinating nonfiction. Actually, I finished it in this month and I'm mentioning it in this month, but I read most of it in March. Read that. I read These Violent Delights, which was great. Loved it. I read Babel, which is probably going to be the best book I will read this entire year. It was so freaking good. And then this month has just been really disappointing and sad. Really sad. I'm not mentioning one book because I haven't finished it yet, so it's probably going to be in next month's wrap-up. Which is Daughter of the Deep by Rick Riordan, and it's just not the usual. And it should be longer, but it's not. And it needed more backstory to like make things make sense and feel fleshed out. So we'll start with a positive, and I think kind of well, no, there's another actual one in there. Okay, so the first one is the interesting nonfiction I read this month. That was Stamped from the Beginning. This is by Ibram X. Kendi. This is such a fascinating book. I really, really enjoyed this book. You know, I mentioned this before. I have trouble rating nonfiction books, but this was a really fascinating one. This one was taking a look at history of America and following different major people of the ages. And it was just a look at history for African American people and the laws and what these people did throughout history to influence what was happening with African Americans of that time. So I found it really interesting. I really like history. So that was a really good book to read for me, personally. I really enjoyed it. So 5 stars, great. It's a really long book, but if you're somebody who loves history, you love, like, getting your hands on sources, on research papers done on history, especially African American history. This is a really good book because this also includes a lot of, but it has a bibliography at the end that you can go and actually read the sources that Ibram X. Kendi uses. It's an extensive bibliography, so there's a lot there if you would like to go and find something. Then I read Every Earl Has a Silver Lining, and this is by, I am forgetting who this is by. Looking at my call pile right now. Anna Markland. This is by Anna Markland, and this is a historical romance about a woman who recently is widowed with a child, and her husband was the Earl, and now the title of Earl has been passed on to a cousin, and she finds out that her husband is actually poisoned, and now the new Earl is also being poisoned, and they're trying to figure out who's poisoning the Earls and the romance between the widow and the new Earl. It's cute. I give it 3 stars. It's nothing new, but it's cute. If you find it interesting, go right ahead. Then I read All's Well by Mona Awad, which is the weirdest book I read this month, but it's Mona Awad, and she wrote the weirdest book I have ever read, in Bunny. I will say, and I think I mentioned this in my 24-hour reading vlog that I did.
Your gay little tattoos, that's why.
I'm sorry. Twitch keeps... Okay, also, just let me know. If you mute Twitch, does it unmute you for, like you don't unmute it? Does it unmute itself for you too? Because it's been doing that, and it's only been for a couple of streamers, but it's really, really annoying, and I'm getting tired of it. Anyways, I like to lurk. Anyways, moving on. Allswell. I was talking about Allswell. I think I mentioned this in my 24-hour reading vlog, which I will leave in the description below. That I like this book a lot better than Bunny. This book makes a lot more sense than Bunny. You can follow it beginning to end fairly easily. You can understand what's going on fairly easily. The ending is very confusing. Mono Wide likes to do these weird things. At the very end, that just like, okay, it was following you up until the point where you threw this in. What? I was with you, Mona. I was with you on this one, and then you did this. And I'm so confused. The very last scene. The very, very last scene. Not the scene in the theater, but the very last scene in the bar. I'm still very confused about. I still need Kayla to explain what happened in that scene. And explain Bunny to me. Because I'm very confused as to everything about Bunny. But this was better. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. Enjoyed it more. If you thought Bunny was very confusing, this one is a bit better. It also includes Shakespeare, so if you're a Shakespeare fan, this one might be for you. Also has chronic illness representation in this one. The next one I read was Premeditated Myrtle. I also read this in the 24-hour reading vlog I did. So I will just refer you back to that vlog where I gave my thoughts. But I thought this was fine. It was average. It didn't really do a whole lot new. I gave it like 3 stars. And then we get to the most disappointing thing that I have read in a very long time. In a long time, I have not read a series finale that was this disappointing. Not since Allegiant, when Allegiant first came out. That was As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. This book is as good as dead. I can't believe I just did that. I can't wrap my head around why Holly Jackson made the choices she did when writing this book. I don't understand it. I really don't. And now I've gotten my best friend Madison to I went to her my first 2 copies of the books. The first 2 books, and I just straight up told her, I was like, hey, I want you to read these first 2 books. So these 2 books are really, really good. But if you get to the 3rd book and you're just like, you've heard me say that this is the most disappointing thing I've read in a really long time. I will tell you what happens in this book. Instead of you wasting your time on reading the last book, I will tell you what happens in the last book. She will probably still want to read it. I can't do anything about it. But I have a whole rant review. I've never done a rant review. Never done a rant review over a book. And this is my first. And I'm so frustrated that this is how this series ended. Gave it 2 stars. Gave it 2 stars. Because that first half was setting up something that was interesting. And then it just tossed it all out the window. tossed the characters that we know and love throughout the window. Destroyed Pip. Destroyed Ravi. The side characters we liked, gone. They're not even there, hardly. Holly. Why? Why did... Doesn't make me want to read Five Survive, which is sitting up there. But I do... I think I've heard fairly good things about that, so... And I do have the prequel novella, Killjoy, which is set before this, so... Oof, okay. And then the last book I read this month was Ancestor. This is by Lee Matthew Goldberg. This is... I had this under mental health representation, as a prompt for mental health representation. The summary for this book is very misleading. It is not hardly what it says it is. It's like, man wakes up and he has no idea who he is. Yes. For like 5 chapters. And then he remembers. And then it's like a Captain America situation. He got stuck in ice for so long. Got unmelted and is back and is dealing with being like 50, 60 years later. It's Captain America. And then he's meeting his family. And I don't even know what genre to put this book in. I think I gave this like 3.5 stars. Then the ending happened. And the last chapter the last 2-3 chapters was like thriller? Horror thriller? What? When up to this point, it was just Wyatt, who is trying to get adjusted to being in the 21st century and trying to adjust being around his family and living with his, they don't know that he's their great-grandfather. But it's just like, okay, this is a fine novel. It's Captain America. And he's also trying to figure out a way to go back in time. So you're like, okay, well, is he trying to figure out a way to go back? And the thing about this book is, warnings, he very much talks like he's in the 1800s, from the 1800s, and there's some questionable things that he says when it comes to indigenous people. This is set in Alaska. The E word is, I don't remember the E word ever being mentioned. He does call them Indians, which is a thing at the time from when he was there. So there's some questionable things there about the Native American indigenous people representation. So I can't speak on this. Obviously, I'm not indigenous person to speak upon this. It just feels kind of weird. But he doesn't say, I don't recall him ever using the E word, which I do know is very offensive to indigenous people in Alaska. So, or at least that's that. But weird things, Native American indigenous people, traditions that are in there. I wish an indigenous person would tell me, talk to me about this more. But it's weird. I'm giving it a 3.5 because I don't think the book really knows what it's trying to be. It's like sci-fi, contemporary, horror thriller. Basically. I listened to the audiobook of this, so that was something. But it's a thing that I read, and I think this would have fit more with plays with time prompt, but the summary does not tell you that the guy is like frozen in time for 50, 60 years. Anyways, that has been all the books I read in the month of April. That's what we just came out of. It's gotta be May. I thank you guys so much for watching. If you did, leave a like, comment, subscribe, do all the YouTube things. Go be a good kind today. Do something kind for someone, even if that is for yourself, because self-care is important. And I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.